Well, hello on Zoom and welcome. I'm really excited to be here with my church community to talk about housing. I'm going to focus today on housing insecurity. This is a real area of passion for myself. A little bit about myself. I represent on the Johnson County Commission, the Northeast area of the Board of County Commissions. There's 100,000 in my district people, so they're very large districts, 11 cities. I served on the Roland Park City Council before I ran for County Commission in 2018, served 2 terms. And previous to that, I worked for former Congressman Dennis Moore, was his district director for 12 years, and he passed away this fall. Just a really good person, probably the best person I've ever worked for in my life and will ever work for. So I've worked in public service a long time, and it's really something that's important to me. But I will say some of those values that I have within my Christian faith and my beliefs were as a child, and I still feel very part of myself. I grew up Mennonite in a small rural Mennonite community in Minnesota. Actually, the community was founded from immigrants from Ukraine. They came to Kansas, Minnesota. My mom's side came to Kansas. My dad's to Minnesota, brought the turkey red wheat, their farming skills, and why Kansas has the sunflower wheat because of those hard working skills of Mennonite. I still have that commitment to community, caring, service that I grew up with, that was a part of my grandparents and great-grandparents. So I never really heard about Methodists growing up. My grandma always told me, just don't marry a Lutheran and a Catholic. I never said don't marry a Methodist. So I didn't even really hear about Methodists till my late teens, early 20s, and my cousin Cal is here, who married a Methodist. and so I never thought in my life that I would end up at a Methodist church, and then my cousins would be at the Methodist church too, but in Wichita. So a life-changing, come on in, experience for me was at the age of 3. My younger brother was born with Down syndrome, and that was in the 60s. And at that time, there was not community supports for children with Down. And my mother, a teacher, I spent many days, we went through state mental health institutions for his placement. That was what the doctors, the church community said, that the best place for my brother would be to grow up in a state mental health institution. So at that point, right at a young age, I began to see the inequities and the inequalities in our system. And that advocating and standing up and speaking up could change for those who didn't have a voice. My favorite story is when I was small, so my mother would meet with school board members, legislators, and being good Mennonites, we'd make pies, and we'd bring meat and eggs to meet with these school board members, because that is how you advocate. You advocate over a piece of a slice of pie. And my brother would sit there and I would sit there, and she would say, my brother should be able to go to school. He should have the same education as everyone else, because at that point he was not able. And one farmer told my mother that good Christian women stay home and take care of their children. And at that point, my little brother just put his head right in the pie. He was not going to have my mom disgraced like that. So even as a small boy, he was not happy. And so my mother lifted my brother up, and she told me stand up. And as we walked out, she said, "Becky, go back and get that pie. We're not." But that didn't. My mom didn't quit. I mean, we continued to meet, and we joined with other families to advocate so that my brother eventually could have services, early childhood services, was one of the first in the region, and that later he was not allowed to ride the bus. So it was steps. That advocacy takes all of us joining together, is my point. And we have a housing insecurity, we have a homelessness needs, we have the lack of home ownership options in our county, but that will take all of us speaking up and being a voice for these issues. So the current county commission, there's only 7 members. Chairman Eilert is the chair. and he is retiring. He's not running again. And there's then 6 of us. Commissioner Hanslick, we are both social workers, which was the first, I think, and she represents most of Overland Park. Commissioner O'Hara, Commissioner Ashcraft, Commissioner Algram does Olathe, Commissioner Myers, longtime mayor, Shawnee. And so it's very small. We are one of the largest counties in the nation. We have very few counties have our size. So we're like around the top 100 counties for population. So our districts are very large. This is one of the first times that there were 4 women on the county commission. When I ran in 2018, there hadn't been a woman. Come on in. There's more. Sure. Oh, no problem. I'm usually the late one. So when I ran in 2018, there hadn't been a woman on the county commission for 10 years. And I know that was really important to me that we have representative, that more voices on the county commission. But you can see there is no one of color. There has never been anyone of color on our county commission. There's very few people of different cultures, races on our city council, school boards, all the elected office. And if you look in our school systems now, around, in the early grades, now we're like 40% diverse. That is something our county will, how do, representation matters on these elected positions. I feel being a woman during the pandemic made a difference because of my strong support for public health measures and mental health services, and that we all bring our different perspectives to a board, like any board of directors. So the county in 2008 had a county housing study. I had served on that when I worked for Congressman Moore, and I was on this for over a year. And that was when, if you remember, Annabeth Serba, she was the first woman chair. She started that task force already in 2008. The county was talking about that we were developing, growing rapidly, and housing was becoming more and more expensive. But the county commission, like what many elected groups do, they take the study, they take all the task force work, and they shelved it. So when I was elected, Commissioner Hanslick and I, the other social worker, come on in. We worked hard to get a board retreat, and during that board retreat, each of us could bring up a priority. For me, housing was the priority that I brought to the county commission, and to have a housing study, a housing task force, that we look at what is the market in Johnson County. And so we worked together with 19 cities on this housing study. And did an extensive survey. So during the survey, some of the things that people, residents in Johnson County said, that we need, more walkable neighborhoods, that we need more support to renovate and rehab our existing older neighborhoods, the lack of housing for people who work in our retail sector, who work in our direct service sector, when you make under $16. And also lack of housing to transit, and then lack of options to age in place. A lot of these Northeast homes, a lot of the homes in older Olathe, they're not accessible. They're 2-story. Bathrooms are in the basement, or laundry's in the basement. So some of the problems this housing study identified, and there was a task force and they worked on it for a year, and that came out in 2021. And it was one of the big issues that talked about the lack of the missing middle of housing. So when you say the missing middle, what does that mean? That means in Johnson County, when Reese Nichols developed a lot of this Northeast, we have a lot of single family. If you go street by street, it's single family. There's not a lot of duplexes. There's not a lot of triplexes. you know, some cities, what, I don't know why they call it the mother-in-law annexes, why isn't it the father-in-law, you know? This little house behind, you know, that, and, you know, the codes don't allow that in the cities in Johnson County. We don't allow a lot of creative type housing. It's where our codes are very focused on single family housing across the county, and that's how we were developed. And when people came to Johnson County, the 50s, 60s, 70s. So we also have, you know, a lot of limited supply of first-time home buyer options. That has really even gotten harder. This study talked about those who are unhoused and homelessness, and you know, in Johnson County for a long time, let me say the word homeless or the word poor people. And even when I brought this study and to my commissioners, and he said, one of them said, I should say who it was, but that, you know, we don't want those people coming to Johnson County, which is, I mean, but, you know, I was like, whoa, you said it, but that's the thought that we've had forever. We don't want more poor people coming to Johnson County. If we have a homeless shelter, then, you know, there's this belief everybody will come. I mean, every community in the nation says if you have any sort of supportive options for homeless, people will all come. But then that means every county in the nation are people going to. So that is something that is, you know, often said for the reason not to have supports for the homeless. And so the need for more housing for people to age and play. In Johnson County, you know, a lot of our senior communities are south, way west. They're not really, you know, a lot of people want to, you know, age and place in their own neighborhood, their own community where their children and grandchildren are. So after this study came back, I was really worried, and the task force worked a year that Johnson County Board would shelve it again, just like it happened in 2008. Which happens all the time. Oh, we got this, we got the problems, we got the survey. Oh, let's put it right here on the shelf. That was good. You know, it can hold up our other books. And so Commissioner Hanslick and I really pushed that we have a subcommittee of the Board of County Commissioners to continue to look at strategies, to prioritize, make a priority of different strategies. And so we created this housing insecurity spectrum. And to, you know, we often think of, you know, we think of homelessness on one end, you know, and then we think of people who can't buy a house on the other hand. But this really shows, you know, the spectrum. You have people who have chronic homelessness, and then you have individuals who experience homelessness at certain times. We saw this during the pandemic. Johnson County received like a quarter of all the emergency assistance in the state because of people experiencing evictions during the pandemic. 2,000 families received assistance during the pandemic to not be evicted and to pay their rent. Johnson County has 1,000 homeless children. Each of the school districts have homeless children they work with through funding. So you have some who are continually homeless, you know, often, you know, are veterans, PTSD, dealing with mental health challenges. And then you have some like families who will experience it periodically. And then also in this housing insecurity, we have populations with special housing needs. My brother, he needs an accessible house with supports. Our Johnson County Developmental Services just opened up his 18th house in the county, but that isn't very many. And so this is a lack of housing that are accessible for persons with disabilities to support them. So we also have in the county people who are cost burdened, can't afford to rent. If you go to this large logistics where all the Amazon warehouses are by Gardner, Edgerton, if you drive around there, you'll see a large number of the license plates are not from Johnson County. They're coming in from Jackson, Cass, Miami, because they cannot find rent in our county. They cannot find a house because most of those jobs are $15 to $18. And then the cost burden homeowners. We have many individuals who can't, you know, afford the house so much, or they are in a house, but then they don't have funding for other necessities in their life. So what is affordable housing? Housing considered affordable if you don't spend more than 30% of your income to live. So if you have food, clothing, transportation, and then 30% housing. But in Johnson County with our rents, our average rents are now $1,100, $1,200 for 1-2 bedroom.
Does anybody ever talk about the foreign money and equity funds that are coming in and buying stuff and renting it and charging more rent for it? I mean, that is a huge effect on this. Housing prices have gone up a lot just because these foreigners are buying these houses sight unseen for more than the listing price, and then they're renting it for more than any other house got rented before. And that's part of the reason why people can't find a house to rent too.
Yeah, no, that is really huge. What we've seen in Mission has, like, if you go, there's Foxfire, there's a lot of older apartments. Marion has a lot of older apartments, and what investors are coming in, and these have been, they received low income tax subsidies 20 years ago, and so that is coming off. So investors from all over are coming in, and so then people are losing that affordable housing, and then they rehab it and bring it up to like luxury or almost luxury housing. Across the county, everywhere you go, it's luxury, luxury, luxury. And then we're losing that supply. In my own neighborhood in Roland Park, it's, you know, it just continually, if a house needs some repair, it gets turned over then into a rental from someone who doesn't, you know, live in the area. So this is, so you can see with paying more than 30% of your rent, it's, you know, when you make under 50,000, it makes it real difficult. So in order to not be 30, you know, teachers, you need to make more than really 50,000 to afford a rental unit in Johnson County. DeSoto has some for 700. Way out in Gardner, there is some for 700-800, but unless you know, make more than 50, 60,000, it's very difficult to find a rental unit now in Johnson County, especially if you have children. And so we need more units, you know, for those making, you know, in a large 20 to 30% of those who work in Johnson County. You know, there are home health aides, there are nursing aides, there are retail workers, our customer service workers, they're the ones working in our warehouses now, shipping all these goods to our front door. So that is a large sector of our workforce that is having struggling difficulty to find housing, rental or home ownership. So where is poverty in our county? You can see it's around 35, a large, you know, if you go down 35, why do you think there's a large sector of poverty around 35? Anybody have any ideas? Nobody wants to live on island. Yeah, that's true.
The opposite side of that is they put the highways where they can acquire land at low cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice investments. Yeah, those apartments that are like between 75th and 87th, they're just a lot of apartments that they built that are like lower quality too.
Yeah, so a lot of lower quality apartments. Lower quality, not safe, lower costs. There's a lot of hotels, you know, a lot of people, you know, a lot of Shawnee Mission families bed surf, you know, in those lower cost motels, hotels until they can get the savings to afford the utility down payment. So you have a lot of that too, that bed surfing along 35. So this is, you know, we often think, well, there's not that many poor people, you know, in our metro area in Johnson County. I always love this slide because if it was the city, you would be the third largest in our metro, and that's, you know, with all the counties. And so, you know, a lot of people, why are they struggling with poverty? Is when you increase that housing cost, and because we have so little housing next to transit, our transit really is lacking. So then you're also dependent on cars in our metro area. Overland Park, I think, was identified as one of the worst areas in the nation to not have a car. I mean, and so we don't have housing next to jobs, next to transit, which really then even impacts a person's economic inequality and economic hardship. So I know this church and many of you have been leading the interfaith hospitality, volunteers, so many people here help make that possible. But I just wanted to highlight, you know, they have 14, this is how many beds that we have for homelessness. And this says 14 beds. And some of you know, they usually don't have 14 beds open at a time. Isn't that correct? Maybe, is it only about, that's their licensure, is how they usually do maybe 4 or 5 beds?
Well,
Like-
it's not that they wouldn't,
No.
they don't have people qualified, you know, enough people qualified to come for 14 beds.
Okay. So they don't have the volunteers or the spaces. It's not that they don't.
No, but people have to pass them.
Okay.
If they're trying to get a job or whatever.
So one of the big needs in our county, we don't have a year-round homeless shelter for adults. And we have very limited options even for families. So you look at, we have the Salvation Army, you know, they have 44 beds. You know, this typically doesn't have 14 beds through the interfaith. And we've seen that during the pandemic. Safe Home is for those fleeing domestic violence. So it's a very specific area. The Project 1020, which is at the Unitarian Church, is just for certain months. And that's really more adult, that is adult focus, not family. And then there's some youth beds, and then these are who've been in justice involved. So very, you know, we're a 600,000 population county, one of the top 100 counties in the nation for population. Look how few beds or few service options. You know, and being a social worker, one of the jokes forever was, well, Johnson County in the metro area by social work. What Johnson County does, they give bus therapy. They give you a bus pass and send you to Wyandotte in KCMO. I mean, that is, you know, and that has been from the metro area is what people say about Johnson County, that we don't serve our families and homeless individuals, homeless families, homeless children, or residents of our county. Many of them, they have grown up here, they live here, they feel connected here. They don't want to go to a shelter in Kansas City, Missouri. Johnson County is their home. And so this is something that we are working on. There's a group connected with Project 1020, Lee Joes, and they are working on developing an incorporation and raising money. And so through the county, we are getting that we help give some seed money, grant money to help a shelter. And when we say shelter, it would be like renovating a hotel, one of the old hotels. And so the first floor would be emergency shelter. The second floor would be maybe job skills. The third floor would be, you know, services for mental health. So it'd be kind of a one-stop support center for those who are emergency homelessness, or for those who are chronically homeless and need, you know, several months. Because when you are unhoused, all you can think about is where you're going to sleep the next night. You cannot focus on jobs, you know, food, family. All you can focus every day is where am I going to sleep tonight that is warm, safe, that I won't get hurt, that my things won't get taken. So on the other end of the housing insecurity is home ownership. Did everybody get your appraisals this week? I'll call your county commissioner and yell. Yeah, that was pretty, they're pretty mind-blowing, aren't they? Yeah, I mean, and you know, every year, I mean, those appraisals, and if, you know, especially, you know, for individuals who live in areas like Prairie Village, Leawood, where you're around all these tear downs, which, you know, I mean, it helps everybody's value, but it also, those who live near, your values go up very high. So why are Johnson County values just skyrocketing? Many people think it's our appraiser that's doing that, but he, has to submit all of his appraised values to the state. And they're based on sales, that he has to show that his appraisal of your house is based on sales. So what we continue to see in Johnson County, there's nothing on the market. People continue to be able to ask for 30, 40,000 more than what they listed for. It's a total bidding war. Our average price went up another 16%, 417,000 is the average price in our county now. So we have very few homes in the market across the county. And what we're seeing now are surrounding counties, Wyandotte, Miami. So people are going now to Wyandotte to renovate a house, to buy a house, Miami, Platte, Cass. So the whole metro area housing prices are going up, not just Johnson County. So this tight residential market just really limits home ownership for our young professionals, people coming out of college, for our young families, our first-time homeowners, because they're having to bid, and in order to get that house, really high prices, which will, with their student loans, might then reach 40, 50% of their income, really saddles them. And so this is really a key issue, and our market's been hot for years. They say that it will probably continue to go up until, as interest rates go up, then the prices might go down. But in terms of home ownership, we also see by that housing study, like in Northeast, you have, the average age of people living in homes are 50, 60. You're seeing decreased younger families, which, typically in the county, you have, older community members go to more of accessible housing, and a young family comes in. But older individuals who would like more accessible housing can't afford accessible housing or duplex or triplex, so they're not moving. And so then young families are not moving in, or first-time home owners. So really our supply is not changing over much either. So what are some options for attainable? A lot of people don't like the word affordable because they think it's, low income housing. And so, a lot of people are using now the word attainable housing, but when I say affordable, I mean market rate housing, that you don't have to be over, most of your income doesn't have to go to housing. So some of the mechanism that our subcommittee and United Community Services is the one that led the housing study and task force, is looking at a trust fund. Douglas County has one, KCMO, and this, a trust fund could help like developers, maybe small developers too, to have that able to invest. Construction prices are so high. So we have very little affordable housing developments that are being developed. Gardner has a workforce housing, they call it, going up. But often developers, because of high costs, need some help with a lot of the city fees that are charged in order to make it work so they can lower the price of the apartments or the condos. Also with the ARPA funds, one of the areas that I'm really pushing for is that we have a program, we have a very small one to help preserve and rehabilitate existing housing, helping people to make their housing more accessible. And then what are the incentives to develop more housing? Our land is very expensive. And so you see some of that in KCMO, you see it in Wyandotte, but their land is not our price. And so what incentives could the county give? Could cities? So cities are really the linchpin here of giving incentives. And right now the state doesn't allow tax increment financing to say part of that goes to affordable housing. But you see in Mission now, they're having a new housing apartment where the Mission Bowl was, that part of that will be market rate housing. So they, more cities in our county need to push at developers to allocate so many units, not to have a whole complex to be luxury. So So as I said, that missing middle housing, the cities are looking at their codes. Can they allow more flexibility? Also, we have, could their requirements allow some infill? We have, some row houses or spaces or that, in each of the cities that, could be, more, have more row houses, duplexes. And how could they, usher in some more changes and flexibility with their codes? People want sustainable green neighborhoods, how to incorporate a community and to help with stormwater management, green space. And these are other things that, the county's looking at with the city is a central database of programs and resources. And I know that our church has formed a network of churches to grassroots network of housing advocates. There's been very little voice in this county to advocate for more accessible housing, more affordable housing, to have a year-round homeless shelter. There's very few voices, and United Community Services have been working on it, and I'm really excited to see this group of churches that Asbury is a part of to advocate that it's time for the county to address housing. Nimbyism is really hard in this county. There was a home just recently in Overland Park that would serve people recovering from addictions, and the neighborhood really fought hard, and it would be 4 or 5 people in a house, and with supports, group supports for recovery. A lot of fear to have any sort of different type of housing stock or housing with supports, or to venture off from the single family housing at all. So this is, wanted to leave plenty of time for questions and your concerns. What areas, do you see are the needs? It's, helpful for me to hear too. What challenges do you see in our county in terms of the housing?
There's a number of flippers. We were talking about the out-of-state interest that come in and buy the properties, but there's also a network of people that flip, they're flipping funds, and they often sell for a large inflated rate of what the house was before. So I don't know how you can stop that. They overpay for the property, then they fix it up somewhat, and then they flip it and still sell it. There's a lot of that going on.
Well, you see this all over the Northeast, that how much people pay to tear down the house.
It's
everywhere.
Yeah, you see it everywhere. Where else is it? Is it Latha too? South OP?
Oh, I'm sure that it's happening.
Okay. Yeah, see, I just thought it was happening more in the Northeast. Yeah.
There's ads on TV. Go buy your house. Give us a call or use our website to sell your house. You don't have to talk to a realtor. We'll buy it.
To tear it down.
Yeah, and it's money coming from all over. A lot of these equity funds, some of them actually have a good percentage of foreign money invested in them. So now you got foreign people from other countries investing in equity funds that are buying houses and then renting them. They don't necessarily fix them and sell them. They buy them and then turn them into a high expensive rent property.
We did that. We had a house.
I just be really curious to find out, if it's just me, I know it's not. How many of you get a phone call every day or twice a week, somebody wants to buy your house? There you go.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All of us just saw it special, right?
No, I didn't know.
I got a letter.
Yeah, and the other thing is that there's more of us age. I refer to aging in place as being able to get around in my house. I can't, but look at more seniors coming into the market. They're going to need housing that they can't even get anywhere in Johnson County, not just the Northeast.
Yep.
It's few and far between that you can find a ranch in Johnson County.
Yeah, no, I've been looking for one too.
You showed a slide earlier with the average real estate value went up 16.5%. Just doing math, that's probably about 100 million in tax revenue for the county, new tax revenue. Is part of the solution taking some of that $100 million and funding some of these initiatives.
So we had for the last 2 years have decreased our mill levy on the county commission. The Shawnee Mission increased theirs, the cities do, Johnson County Community College. So our mill levy for the county is like 15%, and so, yeah, we're getting this federal funds too, and use that. I've been pushing to use that additional money for expanded mental health. Our buildings are so out of date in terms of our mental health, to have a crisis center. But you're right, we do have extra money, but we've been continuing to lower our mill levy. That's what's hard with these increased appraisals. Like when the county lowers it, you got fire district up here, you have school district, Johnson County Community College. We have so many different taxing districts that you don't even see, and then your appraisals go up when we lower it. And the county, I get blamed for everybody's. Nobody calls their city councilor or the fire district.
But the point of the problem is so big because if I want to sell my house, I can be seduced. I want a high price so I can retire to Florida or whatever. So it's a complicated issue to try to get your hands around.
Yeah, and I don't know, and that's where, for me, I've been pushing my targets for our federal money, our extra money from the county is a year-round homeless shelter. We have 2 social workers on it. I feel like we don't do it now, it will never happen. And the other is to have home repair and weatherization programs to help, and accessibility. Those are 2, but I don't know how you address the prices.
You said that the state required cities not to use TIF funds for.
Yeah, so the realtors got in, like, when Lawrence required that every housing project that used TIF, 30% would go to market rate and so many below market rate. And here, like Prairie Village, their rental in Prairie Village is like $1,200, $1,300. So below market rate would be like $1,000. But the realtors got that through, that you can't require that in our tax increment financing, and that needs to be changed.
So that has to be changed at the state level.
Yeah.
We need to talk to our state.
Yeah.
Representative.
So some of the types of housing that you're talking about, affordable, I would say duplexes, triplexes, multifamily that's of a quality. Some of that doesn't get built because of zoning restrictions. Is it the cities or the counties?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So John, we in the county commission just regulate the unincorporated. There's only like 40% left of our county that's not in the city. So all of that is within the city, but there is some housing complexes, in the county. But majority of our, the housing in the rural areas are single. They're family farms, or I call latte cowboys, beautiful mansions. So yeah, we at the county just do zoning for our unincorporated area. Right now, we're doing zoning for a large scale or utility solar, which is going to be very controversial. But it's the cities that really, they need to update to allow some more diverse housing. And what we're seeing is these huge multi-apartment complexes everywhere in the county, and a large percent of them are luxury. I just don't see, how do we have that many people who can afford luxury? And when I say luxury, that's rents over $2,000.
Because they can't afford the same single family home.
Yeah. That's good.
Hi, I just wanted to follow up on the question.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have $100 million more at least in tax revenue. What can we do as a community to help influence the decision makers to spend more money on the proposals that you've outlined? Because money is not the problem.
No,
We're all going to be writing, everyone in this room is going to be writing a bigger check next year for property taxes. The funding's there, the ideas are there. How do we?
I would, all of you would email your county commissioner that we have the housing study. We have that continuum we presented to the commission that we fund, housing, that we support strategies and fund strategies to help address affordable and attainable housing. I mean, there is 2 people on that commission that don't vote yes on anything. So that leaves 5 of us who, well, I don't know, but Commissioner Ashcraft really votes yes on anything, and Commissioner O'Hara really votes yes on anything.
That's fine.
Yeah, so, but I think they're good people, I don't know. I'm in church, I can't blame myself. God will not like me.
Wouldn't this have to go through 18 separate city commissions?
Well, what Johnson County Commission can do is we could fund a more robust housing rehab, housing weatherization program. Because we right now partner with each of the cities on home repair, and it's only $500,000. I mean, and that helps right now, that helps cities, like for veterans who get in code problems, I have a neighbor who the roof is like falling off. And so they'll get in code violation, and that money will help, them get their house up to code violation. So yeah, so we can do that, and we could fund a year-round homeless shelter. And shelter, I want to say more of a service center and support center. It won't, will be really helping people move to, self-sufficiency. So we could do that on the commission too. And we could fund a resource center, a housing navigator that you could call the county and like, what supports are, I can't pay my rent, I'm going to be evicted. Can you help me not go into eviction? So there's things that the county can do, but you're right, all the zoning and is the city. So and that's why this housing study, my board said, well, we're not doing this housing study unless every city agrees. And I said, game on. And so I and a deputy county manager called all the cities, the city councilors, and got them onto the study, because if they wouldn't have been a part of it, large part of our, so they all signed on to this housing study and, are to be moving forward with some end of it. I mean, something about the housing study. I hope they just didn't pay for the study and don't do anything.
I've heard about some cities in California that are changing their zoning laws to promote ADUs, accessory dwelling units, or what you call the granny flat or something.
Oh, it's granny. I forgot what it was called.
But I just, it's like a source of income for like somebody in a house, or where they could move out and their kids could move in the big house, and kind of increase the density in the already existing neighborhoods and not have to pay for the infrastructure, to run sewer and all that there. Is there any interest in that kind of thing in this area?
Well, I know Overland Park, Westwood, I think has changed theirs to allow it. And I know Overland Park was looking at it to allow it. So they've been starting to have conversations. And I think Mission, I'm not as connected with the southern cities. And so when you said that, I'm connected with the northern, because that's, my district.
I've heard one city had pre-approved plans for houses, so they could save like a $10,000 fee if they used that plan, that they didn't have to pay the city to have the plan approved. They tried to come up with some ways to lower the costs for homeowners.
Yeah.
To do that kind of thing.
No.
Yeah.
What's the direction of the appetite for the city leadership?
Build a new building up there in Mission, had that increase.
Is it going up? Is it going down?
Make it apartment.
Well, the new mayor of Overland Park, I'm excited. There's been a number of those homestay, they've been converting those into more, they've passed that. Convert them into more attainable, lower cost housing, because they've done terrible during the. And so he is very much wanting, and so Forward OP has it in its plan. The community members came together when they did that strategic plan that Overland Park needs to address this. The city of Mission has really been working on that. Prairie Village has a housing task force to look at it. Prairie Village housing, I think that would be really hard to address in Prairie Village. Shawnee has been looking at it. So there is a number of cities. Gardner is Gardner, DeSoto, and Edgerton is just skyrocketing. And so Gardner has, approved these, because they have no housing for like 5,000 people who work at that logistics site. And so they, there's developments going up down in Gardner, and Gardner just annexed 6,000 acres from the sunflower ammunition plant. So if we look at, our county, we have 40% that's not incorporated. I bet in 20 years, there may be only 10%.
Well, they have to do a lot of work in the ammunition site because of all the hazardous stuff that went on there.
Yeah, the federal government's put in around 200 million already. This developer is going to have to put more, and there's still more. It's not going to be residential. It will be, they're looking, the rumor is that it could be like a battery, large scale renewable energy battery for
I
car
see.
plant.
Yeah, I would think it'd have to be something.
Just to fall on the purple, so,
That reminds me of
part of the world.
how much, it seems like a lot of our money goes to
And you didn't necessarily look on them kindly.
start the infrastructure.
Right.
Before you
There because they had no
for high.
jobs, no interest in having a
Very
job.
good at getting
They
those
were homeless because they had no job,
starts
and they had no job because they weren't willing to go to the job.
Because I think at one time, our northeast area was fighting that part of South. So who does that? Is that the county that,
That does what?
who does that? Who gives, are there any restrictions on the developers who want us to pay this end of them for the new infrastructure south, and then they only build very expensive homes? Is there any way to put qualifications on that? Is that a?
Yeah, well, Overland Park has, say, if you live way north Overland Park, Overland Park goes down to like 160th.
Yeah.
So you see it, so it's more within the city than a county. And they are, so yeah, I would say cities are starting to, that require more requirements, and you see like the Mission Gateway, how long have we been working on that? And so the mission's basically saying, we're not gonna put, give you tax incentives if you don't do what we want. So cities are now starting to play more hardball than we did for decades, which is good. That's tax money.
I will rant and thought, because when I was teaching, this was brought up at several school meetings about the increase of the base for money for schools. Part of the problem has been that many businesses in Johnson County have been given tips. They're not paying taxes. And so our tax base is low for schools, and people get upset because schools want more money. The other fact is, and probably all already know this, $3 of every $4 goes to the rest of Kansas, not Johnson County schools. Right?
Yeah, we are the economic engine.
We're the engine of Kansas.
Yeah, but
So
yet
they don't know that.
but yet legislators don't want us to have any local control.
Right. So two areas there that are also messing up the funding for where money could go.
Yeah. Well, I would, appreciate, reaching out to your city councilors, reaching out to your county commissioner and say, we need to expand housing options, housing opportunities for people at different incomes. Like I said, we have a large percent of our workforce is, makes less than 40,000 a year. If you make $15 an hour, you make 30,000. And so do we want the workforce, or we're going to be like Vail, we're going to have buses, from counties to come in, and I see that even in our county operations, less and less people who have Johnson County
Should there
licenses.
be some requirements and someone puts a bunch of luxury stuff in that they have to build a certain amount of lower income housing?
Yeah, cities could.
Or no, you can't build these.
Well,
Yeah.
the state legislature said, no, we're not gonna apply it. So that's a state legislature.
This is such a complicated, really
Yeah.
rare issue. but did the study come up with a list of 3 things or 6 things that we can advocate that are specific, that are easy to understand? If 6 things were improved, it would help a lot of stuff, because you just reach out, it's like reaching out into a mist.
I know,
There's so much out there.
and that's why, yeah, definitely, that's why we have this subcommittee. I mean, one is that, you know, money to help rehab homes, renovate homes, home repair, exterior home repair programs, weatherization programs, and support our homeless, unhoused families.
Is this study accessible online?
Yeah, go to United Community Services Housing Study. It's huge.
Okay.
That has every city